All right, this is an album that I've been recommended so often that it was almost overwhelming, especially right when it first came out. And I was dragging my feet in terms of actually reviewing it because it does take a little bit of time to get used to. So let's dive in and talk about it finally. Cavalcade by the Black Midi. So, Black Midi is a really interesting. They're being touted as like a post punk band, but really, in my mind, they're more of a modern progressive jazz band. And I love the style of music that we have on this one. It's reminding me of a very aggressive, kind of like a King Crimson meets Primus at times. Like it has that Les Claypool singing style and bass beat, especially from the first track of John L., as well as the second last track of Hogwash and Boulder Dash. It has that kind of like Les Claypool singing of its it's very rhythmic in that kind of and almost aggressive in that sense, and everything is playing on beat, just and that beat is extremely complex and very off kilter. Like I love that. So it's very aggressive. It's very energetic. It really knocks your feet right from you when you first listen to it, and it's such a strange like bombardment of music, very similar to like what King Crimson was doing in the 80s. Even when it starts to take a little bit of a breather with this kind of like very rhythmic dun, 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 and then it hits you right back over the head. It's such a harsh style of this jazz playing styles. But what I really do love is even though we have such heavy aspects, it bleeds right from John L. into a much more somber and smooth track of Marlene Dietrich. I think I got that one right. But it's much more smooth. You know, it almost feels like this jazz bar. You can see like the smoke rising up from like an ashtray that's still on the band's piano tops or bar stools. It's got this like very fun aspect, and that's kind of what I love. I love these smaller and intimate moments. And I love when these two worlds collide on the third track of Chandramatic Petelia. I don't know. This track I love because it infuses those really harsh, fast-paced, really off-kilter musical styles with these smooth and very grooving expressions. And that's kind of what I love. Like, I love that the guitar is what's really driving the beat at the beginning of this. Like, just that dun, 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 dun. When we get into the big bulk of it, everything kind of hammers right at once. Like we have these horn sections that really hit you really hard and a lot of violins playing as well. So they're not adverse to playing with different musical instruments to really find what is the best musical expression. Now, by far, my favorite track on this album is the fourth track of Slow. And I love that it really utilizes a lot of these soundscapes that bands like Birds and Buildings used. Like I'm really brought back to that style of progressive rock, especially near this end piece where it starts to build itself up. And I love that build. And it reminds me of so many of these like progressive rock builds that we had within Birds of Buildings, even Carfagan and some of these like more retro prog outfits. But in this really strange avant-garde, jazzy, modern prog expression. And I love that a band such as Black Midi is utilizing this style that has been unearthed from these past bands to such a great degree. I would be surprised if Black Midi had ever heard of Birds and Buildings, but really, the two styles are uncannily similar. So the second side of the album is a lot more somber. It's a little bit more mellow, and I really, really appreciate that. It allows us to take stock of the soundscapes that have come before. Diamond Stuff is very slow and very somber, and I appreciate that they are allowing themselves to do this. So many bands want to fill their albums jam-packed with like thousands upon thousands of notes that I appreciate when a band like Black Midi is able to just take a breather, take a step back, and allow the music to just develop. It reminds me of something that, say, Motorcycle would do with a lot of their albums and a lot of their expressions. And it allows a track like Dethroned to come out of that and build itself back up, and we have some beautiful resolutions when we come into that. They're not quite as bombastic, because once we get into the 7th track of Hogwash and Balderdash, we're back into that really heavy atmosphere. We're back into that really jazzy avant-garde expression of music. So I like that Diamond Stuff and Dethroned give us about 10 minutes of this breath of fresh air before we dive into that next section, which then ends off with Ascending Forth, the 8th track and the final track of almost 10 minutes. And this track is just a odyssey of music. And I love that it really does take its time to build. Again, using albums and bands such as Carfagan, such as Birds and Buildings, and even like little tastes of like a Scott Walker in the darkness in that. We have that, especially the singing styles. It feels very similar to a Scott Walker, where it's very verbosive or operatic. That's the word I'm looking for in its presentation. And it allows this track to take on a new form. And I really do love the build. So once we get into like the 7 or 8 minute mark, this sound of music is allowing that build up, that momentum from behind it, push it into this new world, into this new expression of music. And I love that big crescendo by the end where we have all the strings coming forth that really help hammer the album home. So overall, this album was a real treat, even if it took me quite a while to get into. I'm not going to lie. This one really took its toll to try to get its teeth into me, but honestly, it wouldn't let me sleep. It always was reminding me, hey, I'm here. You got to listen to me. Hey, remember me? You got to listen to me. And I really appreciate the fact that it's getting the notoriety and the exposure that this style of music really deserves to have. I love this expression, and I really hope that more bands pick up this style of the avant-garde, jazzy style of like prog. This is one that I would download or pick up in physical format. I'm kind of wavering between the two. I'm not quite sure where I land. It is a recommendation. Go and check it out if you're into this more avant-garde style of music. I think you'll really find something special out of it. And that's what I've got for Cavalcade from Black Midi. What did you guys think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. And also, if you like what you see and you want to help support me, consider donating to my Patreon. I've left the link down below. Get your name at the end of the credits, and a shout out on all of my live streams. And even $1 a month really does go a long way. So, yeah. And if you want to see more of me, I've got my podcast, Quid Pro Quo, and I've got my other YouTube channel of notes on tabletop role-playing games. Yeah, so that's what I've got. Thank you so much for watching. Obviously, and always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.